Welcome back to the Music City Drive-In. I'm Eric, and I have the opportunity here to speak with Jason Loftus about his new movie, Eternal Spring, a gorgeous documentary filtered through the animation style from an artist, Daxiong, who has worked with DC and Marvel, I believe, over Star Wars and Justice League. Uh, Lended talents to telling a story about persecution and freedom to practice one's religious beliefs. Mr. Loftus, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Eric.
This is a gorgeous movie with a beautiful statement from Da Zhang at one point about heroes being something made from kindness and determination. That has got to
Mm-hmm.
be one of my favorite things. And so I just wanted to ask you a little bit about at first, how was this project decided on, and what did the
Mm-hmm.
process look like developing it and
Yeah,
incorporating the animation and everything?
this one was kind of unique. I was making a kung fu video game a few years ago, and it featured some visual novel component, and we were looking for some still art, so illustrations. And we learned about this artist who was living in New York at the time, originally from China, Daxiong, and he'd drawn for Justice League. He did the Star Wars comics when it was with Dark Horse before the Marvel takeover, but he had been working with also Jin Yong, like the leading kung fu novelist in China. So he just had, this track record, amazing artistic talent, and also the cultural background to work with us on this kung fu property. So we invited him up to Toronto, and we were collaborating in our studio. And I learned that Dashong came from the same hometown as my wife and producing partner, Masha Loftus, which is a city in northeast China called Changchun. Now, their experiences there were very different. Dashong is part of the Falun Gong community, spiritual practice that's been persecuted in China since the late 90s. Masha was not part of that community. She doesn't practice Falun Gong, and she was the daughter of a mid level government official in China. So she had had no connection with any kind of dissident or persecuted groups. And this was kind of a blank spot for her. So hearing what people had been enduring under her nose in her own city was like a huge impact on her, and I think something that really stirred her and said this is an important story for Chinese people in general to have this conversation. I come to it from a different perspective. I had an interest in Eastern philosophy and meditation when I was in high school, and I encountered Falun Gong in 98, a year before there being a persecution in China. And so I came to it from that angle, and I found it to be, a positive, beneficial meditation practice with values that seemed, not just benign, but probably positive, tolerance, compassion, truthfulness, this kind of thing. And so a year later, when the Chinese authorities start cracking down on it, and I'm in high school, I'm a teenager, I know very little about the Chinese political situation at this time, but I start hearing this narrative that these people are evil and dangerous and we need to get rid of this thing. And I just couldn't reconcile what I was hearing from the state media narrative with my own experience, my encounters with Falun Gong and with the community of people, mostly Chinese expats that I had met in North America. And so I think for me, this planted this seed of interest in the human rights subject in China. And I think a sympathy for people who are misunderstood, especially misunderstood in a way that, the narrative that was put forward about them wasn't just off. It was something that fueled hate and fueled a persecution campaign that they were enduring. So when we came across this story, and Dashong, he's not one of these people who has hijacked the television. So the story is that this group is being persecuted. It was once tolerated, even encouraged by the authorities. It becomes very, very popular. It has a spiritual and religious kind of component to it, which is very kind of taboo in communist China. They had been at odds with any religion that they didn't have control over since they took over in 1949. And so there's this tension. Falun Gong is banned. People who continue to practice it are rounded up and thrown into labor camps. And the people who persist in their practice, they're trying to get the word out and saying what the media is saying about us is not accurate. So they're handing out leaflets and flyers and sort of video CDs and such. But they decide that they just can't keep up with the onslaught of the media because all of the channels of communication are essentially controlled by the state. So there's a band of these sort of underdogs who hatch a plan to climb the television poles, in prime time and hatch, hook up their own kind of home video on a like a primitive CD-ROM player and interrupt the state television broadcast with their own messaging. So Dashong is part of the Falun Gong community, but he's not part of this hijacking effort. And he starts at it with kind of mixed feelings. For one, he's very sympathetic of the effort to counter the government's narrative, but he's also like, did we poke the bear here? Like this really brought down a heavy hammer. A lot of people suffered. Dashong briefly detained and tortured himself. He flees. He leaves his home behind. His comic book studio is uprooted. It's a huge cost for him and for many, many other people who suffer, as is depicted in the film. People lost their lives in the aftermath of this. So he's grappling with this story. He clearly wants to explore it, and he wants to explore it. The best way for him to process something and to communicate something is through his art. So we're working on this kung fu video game. We see this story. Masha and I both have this kind of interest from a humanitarian perspective, but then from an artistic and filmmaking angle, I'm looking at this and saying, this is really unique because, my work cuts across documentary and animation. I've worked in both spaces. I've really enjoyed animated documentaries. Flea was awesome last year. I didn't see it until after I had finished my work on this film because it's more recent, but I love the film. And there were others in the past that I would say more as an inspiration, like Waltz with Bashir a number of years ago, Tower, even, that used a rotoscoping method, a different animation style, but really, really cool how you can recreate scenes that are difficult to show through archival footage because it doesn't exist, or there's an issue of access, and you can really create something with animation. But what excited me about this story in particular was that it was different, because typically when you see animation in a documentary, it's this decision by the invisible hand of the director. You see the animation, you don't know what kind of subjective artistic interpretations and decision making has gone into that. You miss that process, right? And so here we have an artist who himself has his life impacted deeply by this event, and he wants to understand it through his artistic process. He's meeting other survivors. We meet the lone surviving hijacker who's escaped China, and he's able to connect with him. It's like, why were you doing what you were doing? And then all the elements of the details of the heist story is kind of piecing this together. But for Daxiong, he's able to face the longing and nostalgia that he has for his hometown that he's been separated from, the pain and trauma of torture that he carries with him. He's facing all of this through his artistic process. These demons are coming up, and he's coming to some kind of new understanding. And for me, this was unique and exciting because the artistic process is like that. You never quite finish a project the same way you begin. There's always a growth, and the ability to depict that on screen and show the power that art has to bring healing, understanding, catharsis, all of that was really, really exciting for me. So this is where we got this kind of blend of animation and really in the style of Daxiong's, really using his actual illustrations and bringing them to life in animation, combined with the real world interviews where we sort of we anchor this and say, hey, these are real people. Not just that, let's see this artist engaging with other survivors and seeing how together they can build this shared memory into an artistic creation.
Yeah, that some of the powerful moments for me were him sitting with Mr. White and reliving his memories and things. I guess a big question that I have is, do the people involved in this documentary feel safe? Are there adverse consequences from the movie for them coming out?
It's a good question. And I think it's essential as a documentarian that you're getting not just permission or agreement for someone to participate. You have to be thinking very responsibly when people are dealing with trauma. Is it not just that they're willing, but do they really want to go there? Are they ready to tell this story? One. And secondly are you subjecting people to any more harm or risk than they've already faced because you don't want to do that, right?
I just want to know that they get to breathe. They've been through so much.
Universally, with the individuals that are depicted in the film, they weren't just willing. They were adamant that they wanted to tell their story. And part of it is they had gone through so much to be able to speak out inside of China. The risks that they now face outside of China pale in comparison to that. And they're like, I've gone through all of this because I want to speak out. And at the same time, they're carrying with them this kind of, I don't know if an element of it is probably survivor's guilt, but there's something else there too, which is that their friends and other people in their community died or are unable to speak. And they feel like this burden of, they want to be able to shine a light on what's going on with these people. They want to be able to help. And I think the thing that goes with that is that it isn't just that they want to tell their story. They believe shining a light on the situation is, in some cases, their best or only recourse, and it's the best way that they can help there. And I'll give you an example. I interviewed a man who had been tortured very badly in a prison in southern China. And when his circumstances improved at some point, and he didn't know why that had happened, they just stopped treating him as harshly as they had. When he came outside of China, he learned that his family members had been behind an effort, meeting government officials, getting his name in media reports. His name had appeared in some human rights reports. They were really shining a light on his situation. And he recognized after the fact that this had a real tangible impact on his situation in China. So even though these people are treated awfully in detention, and the authorities definitely are condoning or even encouraging torture and abuse, when the people meeting out these abuses recognize that people outside of China know what they're doing, it has a
Yeah.
real restraining effect. So these people want to tell their story because they want to shine a light on it. They also
Yeah.
think that this can help others who are still inside China.
What do you or Daxiong feel that people who view this movie can do to pay respect to the people who've suffered or lost their lives?
Yeah, so the question naturally becomes, so like, what's your impact plan for this? And I felt unprepared for it because I approached it as a filmmaker in the sense of like, well, this story connects with me and I want to share it with people. And so it took me
This
some
was
time.
the
And there are,
impact plan.
yeah, yeah, the impact is that these people had their voices snuffed out and I want to give them a voice. And that's the impact that I feel I can make. But of course, now there are sort of like people who with more expertise in this area who deal with impact. We're working with Together Films. They've helped us to sort of formulate a, hey, this is what you can do. So, when we do our screenings, there's sort of like a take action. There's like a little postcard we give out. It's got a QR code. People can click there and they can, spread the word, look into human rights organizations that are dealing with these issues, sign a petition, that kind of stuff. So there are those actions. And I believe there's probably links to some of those things from our website, eternalspringfilm.com. But the biggest thing for me as a filmmaker is that you spend so much time with these film subjects, again, some of them who did not survive, and they made remarkable sacrifices, very heroic actions to shine a light on something, to speak out. And to a certain extent, you feel like you've built a relationship with them and that you're kind of carrying that torch on. So for me, it's if people are connecting with this film, connecting with these ideas of the courage that's required to speak out in the face of injustice, tell other people about it. See the film, talk about the film, point other people to it. It's about having a conversation because this conversation was snuffed out and these people were not able to continue it. And frankly, for a lot of filmmakers in the West, media in the West, these are very sensitive and difficult stories to cover. So the fact that we can now play this film and it's getting such prominent exposure, to me, it means this is kind of carrying on their message and shining a light on things that they wanted to shine a light on.
Mm-hmm. And so, when and where can people see Eternal Spring?
So right now in the US, we're in 77 cinemas, 76 of them with AMC, and we held at Film Forum where we did an exclusive opening last week and had great response. We filled the two different Q&As on screenings on Friday and Saturday night. So we're still holding there at Film Forum, and we're at 76 more cinemas with AMC. So just go to our website, eternalspringfilm.com. For your audience outside of the US, the film either is or will be playing theatrically now in 9 countries. So you can just find the listings on our website. And then we're still traveling at a number of film festivals around the world as well. So the film's having its Asian premiere in Dharamshala in a couple of weeks, I think, and it's playing at many European festivals this fall. So just all of that information is on the website at eternalspringfilm.com.
Well, pardon me for getting a little hyped up for a second, but oh my gosh, go see it. It's so rare that I get to see one of these that has a widespread from a company like AMC. Oh my gosh, go to the theater. What are you doing if you're watching this? Oh my gosh. No, this is different from, like you said, like there are Tower and there are a few others that do this, but there's an engaging heist in this. You get to watch a movie that feels like a movie in this. If you have the opportunity at the theater that's near you to see Eternal Spring on the list of what's going on, and sure, the guy who made it is sitting across from me talking about this, but to be honest with you, I apologize. I do not care. Go see the movie while you have the chance to see the art blown up like this. Oh my gosh. All right, rant over.
Yeah,
Thank you.
the response has been great, and honestly, I don't. The film was selected as Canada's entry for the Oscars in the Best International Feature category on August 24th. The response has been excellent. It's an independent film, so it's not. We don't have the marketing budgets. It's really based on word of mouth at this point. People are loving the film, connecting with the film, and that's how we're able to do what we're doing. So yeah, definitely. Obviously, I'm biased here, but I should tell you, in terms of the big screen experience, we made this film and COVID happened in the middle of it. And we were worried that the theaters were going to be closed and what was going to happen. Fortunately, it took us so long to finish this thing that by the time we did, things had opened back up. But we made this in cinema 4K in scope format 239. It's because when we started working on this, we just saw the artwork that Daxiong was creating and our animation team was collaborating to kind of bring it to life in a 3D experience. We just felt like this deserves to be on the big screen, and so we just went with that with like this gut. Let's go for it. And fortunately, we've got everything we've got now. So yeah, I would love it if people, see it on the big screen and spread the word while you can see it in cinemas.
This is the Music City Drive-In. So please come by our website and check out some things. And please go see Eternal Spring and go to eternalspring.com, and we can find a couple of different links there to support some of the cause and voice that put this out. You guys, it is not just one religious practice that has been oppressed in that. When you see this movie, this is about a dynamic that exists in a culture, okay, that is not gone. And so telling this story, sharing this story, regardless of what you believe, if you want to walk away and nitpick one or the other and, oh, was this true and that, like, it doesn't matter. Just go see this and listen to somebody share their story for 1 second, like, just open. And yeah, and just thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. It was a pleasure, Eric.